Tonight, one final pitch. The Harris and Trump camps put their case to crucial swing states ahead of the US election. Hello, I'm Briana Shepherd. This is ABC News. The Reserve Bank keeps interest rates on hold despite lower inflation. The ABC apologises for errors in its Afghan War series reporting. And Knight's Choice causes a boil-over at Flemington, winning the 164th Melbourne Cup by a nose. They've crisscrossed the country dozens of times, but for Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, the closing hours of the campaign played out in very different ways. Trump continued his blitz through the swing states, raising concerns about the legitimacy of the election, while thousands of Kamala supporters gathered in Philadelphia for a star-laden rally as a Democrat candidate placed her final focus on an optimistic message. Our reporters have been following every step of the final days of the race. We begin tonight's coverage with North America correspondent Barbara Miller in the must-win state of Pennsylvania.
Close to midnight on the eve of America's election, one final pitch to voters.
Just one more day in the most consequential election of our lifetime, and the momentum is on our side.
Addressing supporters from the place made famous by the 1970s movie Rocky.
Here at these famous steps, a tribute to those who start as the underdog and climb to victory.
In a sign of just how important Pennsylvania is, Harris spent the whole day in the state.
Let's get this done.
Jetting to Philadelphia for her grand finale with some A-list backers.
I cast my vote for someone who will be a president for all.
Every single vote, every one is going to matter. That's why I've come to Philadelphia tonight.
Puerto Rican star Ricky Martin also taking the stage. He endorsed Harris after a comedian at a Trump rally joked his homeland was garbage. The Democratic candidate noticeably didn't name her opponent, but she certainly referenced him.
Turn the page on a decade of politics that has been driven by fear and division.
Do you think she's going to win?
I don't want to say that because I don't want people to think we have it in the bag and not come out and vote. But yes.
I think she's going to win by a landslide.
Really? Philadelphia has seen this kind of rally before. Exactly 8 years ago, it was the setting for another Election Eve campaign event by another Democrat, hoping to become America's first female president.
Pennsylvania, it all happens tomorrow.
Kamala Harris and her supporters hoping this time history will be made. Barbara Miller, ABC News, Philadelphia.
The former president was making his last-ditch attempts to woo undecided voters with a starkly different vision for the country. Donald Trump mostly steered away from prepared remarks as he lobbed insults and a furious tirade against his Democrat opponents.
Kamala, you're fired. Get the hell out. Get the hell out of here.
Donald Trump is on the warpath.
If we get everybody out and vote, there's not a thing they can do.
The former president was also in the crucial swing state of Pennsylvania, making his last-ditch pitch to be the leader of the free world for the second time. In his final rally before the nation decides who will be president, Donald Trump came out swinging.
I will stop the invasion of criminals coming across our border. I will strengthen our military. I will restore peace in the world. And I will rescue the American dream. But Kamala is, this is known, she's a very low IQ person. And we don't need a low IQ individual. We've had that for 4 years.
Across the United States, the mood for Republicans is confident and combative.
I think Donald Trump's going to have a red wave is what I think. I watched the hearings from the last 2020 election, and it was blatant fraud. Nothing came of it. But I think we're ahead of the game this time.
Trump voters out in strength for a final push before voting day. Donald Trump's third presidential campaign ended here in Michigan much like it began. Promises to end wars, improve the cost of living and cast a long shadow of doubt over the legitimacy of one of the world's oldest democracies. Elias Kluwer, ABC News, Grand Rapids.
With the campaigning complete and election day soon dawning, America's future is now in the hands of the voting public. North America correspondent Jade McMillan is in Florida.
The opening of polls across the country brings an extraordinary campaign to a close. Both candidates are retreating to familiar territory for Election Day. The Vice President will return to her old university in Washington, D.C., while the former president will be here at his home in Florida's West Palm Beach. Regardless of the outcome, it will be historic. Kamala Harris would become America's first ever female president. Donald Trump only its second to make a comeback after being voted out of the White House. But for many Americans, this is a nerve-wracking moment. 4 years on from the violent aftermath of the last election, security is being stepped up at polling places and counting centres. Authorities preparing for the possibility that the end of a tumultuous campaign could signal the beginning of another divisive period.
And some of the first votes have now been tallied and reported as part of a midnight tradition in a small township in the northeast of the country. Here's US election analyst Casey Briggs.
Tomorrow, it's decision day. American voters will pick their next president. But one town has had a head start. We have the first figures in the state of New Hampshire, specifically from this bit of New Hampshire, a little town called Dixville Notch. And at midnight local time, as it does every 4 years, it was the first place in America to report votes. The result? Kamala Harris 3 votes, Donald Trump 3. A tie. An omen of things to come? Look, obviously we're not going to read too much into that, but we are now off the blocks in the race for the White House. And tomorrow, here in the ABC Election Centre, those 6 votes will become tens of millions. And we'll be here to count them all, along with Jeremy Fernandez.
Casey, our coverage kicks off before sunrise and continues right through the day, culminating in a special edition of ABC News at this time tomorrow night. I'll be co-hosting during the day with Bridget Brennan, plus a panel of experts exploring the key issues, not just for the United States, but also what's at stake for us here in Australia. Every count, every result beamed straight to us in the election centre and straight up onto the big board. Casey, these are the 538 electoral college votes, state by state, in a country that's split right down the middle.
Right down the middle indeed. On the left, all of the electoral college votes that were won by Joe Biden 4 years ago. On the right, those that were won by Donald Trump. And as the votes roll in tomorrow, and as those states start to get called one by one, these bricks in our big board will colour in, and we'll start to get a firmer idea of who'll be the 47th President of the United States.
The Reserve Bank has kept interest rates on hold once again. The RBA governor says while core inflation is moving towards its target, the central bank still needs more convincing that it's going to stay down.
For these punters at the Melbourne Cup, a lot was riding on the Reserve Bank's interest rate decision.
We've probably had like a 45% increase on our weekly mortgage repayments.
It's a lot harder these days now, with everything else going up, you know, food and fuel and all the bills and everything.
Clearing the inflation barrier is no easy feat.
I don't even know who won.
The RBA governor is more focused on tackling underlying inflation and still can't rule out a rate rise.
We do think that there are still some risks on the upside. That's why I say we can't rule anything in or out.
As expected, the Reserve Bank kept the cash rate on hold at 4.35%.
What this means is that rates haven't gone up since last Melbourne Cup day.
We are absolutely at the back of the pack in seeing reduction in interest rates. We've seen them in the US, in the UK, in Canada, New Zealand, Europe, elsewhere, but not in Australia.
While we may be a laggard when it comes to interest rate cuts, rates here are still low compared to other nations like the US and New Zealand. And given the nation's leading economists are not expecting a rate cut by Christmas, borrowers will have to wait until next year for any mortgage relief.
I still think first half of next year it's likely, but we shouldn't be holding our breath for a lot of interest rate cuts in Australia.
I really don't think we can expect any rate relief from the RBA until about May of next year.
The Governor wouldn't be drawn into forward guidance for next year.
We will try to make sure that we're tuned in enough that if things start to turn down more than expected, that we're ready to act, but we don't know.
With rates staying higher for longer, Australians with home loans are being advised to seek out a better deal.
There are 34 different lenders offering at least one variable rate under that 6% mark, so it is well worth looking at the refinancing numbers.
So it pays to switch lenders to minimise the mortgage pain. David Chow, ABC News.
The ABC has apologised for multiple errors in a 7:30 investigation aired 2 years ago about allegations of war crimes involving Australian commandos in Afghanistan. The errors include adding the sound of extra gunshots to footage and taking a comment out of context. National Affairs editor Melissa Clark reports.
It's this footage that has been under close scrutiny, used in television and online stories about the conduct of the 2nd Commando Regiment in Herlyn Province in 2012. 2 months ago, the 7 Network's Spotlight program raised complaints about the sound of extra gunshots being added in. Today, the national broadcaster offered this apology.
Obviously, this shouldn't have occurred, and we're taking it and have taken it very seriously, and that's why we sincerely regret and apologise those editing errors in the video clips.
The ABC had commissioned its former head of editorial policy to conduct a review. It handed an interim report to a Senate estimates hearing today. On the extra gunshots, it found they were inadvertent rather than deliberate, with no evidence suggesting it was done at the direction of journalists involved. The report dismissed concerns about how the footage had been slowed down and zoomed in, but it upheld a complaint by a former US Drug Enforcement Agency team leader who was interviewed, who felt his general remarks about the need to investigate war crimes allegations were used to refer to the Australian regiment. The report found the comment was taken out of context and used in a way which was potentially misleading.
Was anyone's employment terminated as a result of this?
Senator, I can confirm no one's employment has been terminated.
As Director of News, those publications were referred up to me, and I take full responsibility for signing off on those publications.
Whilst not found to be deliberate, altering audio and out-of-context quotes are nonetheless serious editorial failings. It harms the ABC's reputation at a time of growing mistrust in the media. Melissa Clark, ABC News, Canberra.
A Perth hospital has promised to improve its paediatric emergency services following an investigation into the death of a toddler and the misdiagnosis of a girl bitten by a deadly snake. An independent review of the 2 cases found inadequate communication with parents who described feeling disempowered in the decision-making around their child's diagnosis and care.
For Sanjoy Dar, the loss of his child, Shandapan, has been an ongoing battle. But new findings into the care his son received at Joondalup Health Campus have added another blow.
I left my soul on 23rd of March in Joondalup. So I do not have any emotion remaining. I just want that judgment counts. And I understand that justice delayed is not delivered justice.
Shandapan was just shy of his 2nd birthday when he died after weeks of a persistent fever. His parents attended the hospital twice, where they say their requests for blood tests were repeatedly ignored. An autopsy later revealed the toddler had treatable leukemia.
If Shandapan been diagnosed and treated properly, he should be with us today.
The independent review found Shandapan's clinical care was acceptable and that the decision not to order blood tests was reasonable. His family say they remain unsatisfied with the findings but have welcomed the news of a coronial inquest.
I am just alive because I need to reach to the goal where my son gets justice and the other parents like me do not face the same consequences.
The review also assessed the case of a 10-year-old girl who attended the hospital with a suspected snake bite in May, where staff had thought she was faking her illness to get out of school.
It was evident that there was a snake bite there and they needed to do some more training to make sure that they don't miss it again.
The report makes 10 recommendations to improve service delivery at Joondalup Health Campus. The hospital says it's committed to implementing the 9 that fall within its scope, including improving communications between parents and clinicians.
There isn't always that opportunity to stop and think and have that conversation and really get clarity about what it is their expectations are while they're there. So we're changing that.
I believe the Dar family when they say they advocated strongly for their child. We're working to elevate concerns of parents right across the healthcare system.
The date for the inquest into Shandapan's death is yet to be announced. Tabarak Al-Jarood, ABC News. A WA police constable has died after being pulled from the water while diving at a Perth beach. Police and other emergency services were called to Metham's Pool in Perth's northern suburbs about 10:30 this morning upon reports of a diver in distress. Several emergency services personnel were deployed to the scene, including Water Police, City of Stirling Surf Lifesaving and St John, WA. The woman, aged in her 40s, was declared dead at the scene. She was off duty at the time. The death isn't being treated as suspicious and a report will be prepared for the coroner. An occupational therapist has told the trial of parents accused of starving their daughter she was concerned the teenager may not be able to function as an adult. The district court has been shown photos taken by police of the home of the teenager, who was barely more than 27 kilograms when she went to hospital. The court heard the girl, who was nearly 17, was treated by her parents as if she was a much younger child. Occupational therapist Gemma Warrington told the court the girl lacked independence and had reduced maturity. She said she was concerned she wouldn't be able to function as an adult and interact with the community. But Ms Warrington said the girl was showing more independence after several weeks in hospital. The WA Premier has described the conduct of a West Australian mining magnate as highly disappointing, but says he can't see why WA Labor should hand back political donations from his company. Chris Ellison will step down as Managing Director of lithium and iron ore company Mineral Resources after an internal investigation found he failed to disclose an interest he held in an offshore company. Mineral Resources has donated close to $9,000 to WA Labor since July. The Premier says he can't see why that should be handed back.
Mineral Resources is a respected public company. Now, they have made a statement yesterday with regards to the conduct of their CEO. But that doesn't undermine the fact that Mineral Resources is an important and strong Western Australian resource company.
The state government has significantly reduced fishing exclusion zones in the new South Coast Marine Park. When it's officially opened in 2026, the park will span from Bremer Bay to the South Australian border. Final plans revealed today show no-take fishing sanctuaries will cover 20% of those waters.
Mitchell Waderman has spent years fishing these pristine waters off Esperance, but he's long been worried about how the new South Coast Marine Park could change that. Today, as the state government released its final park plan, he finally got his answer.
Not enough has changed to warrant them thinking they've done a good job. We're going to be fighting this for the rest of our lives.
Draft plans proposed locking up a quarter of the marine park for no-take sanctuary zones. But after 4 months of consultation, the government has scaled that back to 20% of the park.
So it's the right balance, we believe, between conservation, recreational and commercial fishers and the general community who enjoy this area.
But commercial fishers say the plan will force some out of the industry.
There almost certainly will still be fishers that have to leave.
The state government received more than 22,000 submissions about the park and say the majority were supportive. But environmentalists are disappointed more sanctuaries weren't put in place.
We need 30% protection by 2030. We didn't get it.
Traditional owners who will jointly manage the park also wanted more protection.
We do think there's some missed opportunities, particularly around shore connectivity, but ultimately 116,000 hectares is better than nothing.
The park has been divisive. Esperance locals have questioned the motivations behind the plan, and traditional owners say it's fuelled racism.
It has been extremely hard on our mob. The well-being of our people have been significantly impacted.
The state government says this marine park will rival some of the world's best, but stakeholders agree that will take more than lines on a map. They want funding in place for research and infrastructure before the marine park opens. Emily Smith, ABC News, Esperance.
To finance now, and the Aussie dollar didn't move today when the Reserve Bank announced its decision. Here's Alan Kohler.
Well, an outsider might have won the Melbourne Cup, but the favourite won the rate cut stakes half an hour earlier. As usual, there were three horses in that race: Cut, Hike and Hold. Cut and Hike threw off their riders at the start and then ran the other way, but it didn't matter because no one had any money on them. All the money was on hold. So the Aussie dollar is steady tonight at 66 US cents. Here's 30 years of the RBA cash rate, and while it's up a long way from 0.1% in 2.5 years, it's only just above average. But of course, the household debt upon which interest is paid is anything but average. In those 40 years, it's gone from 70% of income to 190% of income. The RBA also released its quarterly statement on monetary policy today with its annual confession of forecasting hits and misses. The big miss has been productivity since COVID. The RBA thought it would increase, but it collapsed instead. Big mistake, because as Paul Krugman said, productivity isn't everything, but in the long run, it's almost everything. I would add that that especially applies to its effect on interest rates. On the share market, Domino's Pizza got burnt after announcing that Chief Executive Don Mage will be retiring. Now, he's 55 and he's been working for Domino's for 37 years, so he started at 18 and he became CEO at 33. He listed Domino's in 2005 with a value of $135 million and it's now worth $3 billion, selling pizzas around the globe. The market finished 0.4% lower. Shares fell in New York last night but rose strongly in Japan and China today, and on commodity markets, iron ore, copper and oil all went up between 1% and 2%, while gold eased. And that's finance.
Irish jockey Robbie Dolan came to Australia to follow a singing dream, but today he etched his name into racing history, winning the Melbourne Cup on board Knight's Choice. In front of a crowd of 91,000, the 28-year-old passed the highly fancied international contingent to deliver trainer Sheila Laxon her second Cup victory.
A Melbourne Cup winning jockey, it's a moment this Irishman won't forget anytime soon.
Knight's Choice warp speed, they hit the line, it's a photo finish. Knight's Choice, I reckon, it's one from warp speed and a photo.
An emphatic win for the Irish singer, who might have produced his best hit yet.
Pinch me, I think I'm dreaming. It's incredible. I can't believe it. I don't even know what to say.
Knight's Choice edging out Warp Speed in second and Akita Sushi in third. Most interest was on the international raiders, but with 200 metres to go, Dolan found a gap and Knight's Choice did the rest. Dolan came to Australia from Ireland 8 years ago to chase a music dream as a contestant on The Voice.
So come on, let it go. Just let it be. Why don't you be you and I?
Taking centre stage with his dad, wife and daughter in the crowd, co-trainers John Simons and Sheila Laxon riding every bit of the emotion. Laxon winning her first Cup 23 years ago when she became the first female to win the Caulfield Melbourne Cup double with Ethereal.
Well done. I'm not just a good singer.
Once upon a time, the Flemington feature really was a wild dream. Today, Dolan shared it with 91,000 people, the highest crowd since 2016, who this morning were off and racing. The 164th edition of the Cup, no better excuse to frock up in your Tuesday best.
Racing and fashion less synonymous with each other.
Something different, first time to the Melbourne Cup.
And it wouldn't be the Melbourne Cup without celebrity guests. Four-time Olympic champion Ariane Titmus enjoyed being mostly out of the spotlight.
This is honestly my favourite thing to do when I'm on a break from swimming, and this year I don't actually have to train tomorrow, so I can really enjoy the day.
The day drawing punters from far and wide.
We come from Mount Isa.
Just come down to check out the Melbourne Cup.
With Ladies' Day coming earlier than usual, the race featuring a record number of female jockeys and trainers.
To now be able to relax and just watch on and enjoy all the girls that are riding in the Cup today and just all the great racing, it doesn't get much better than this.
The day a success for those who took a chance on the outsider. For the Dolan camp, leaving with extra luggage on a day they'll never forget. Alexia Pesce, ABC News, Melbourne.
It might not be the race that stops the nation, but it did slow down the tiny Northern Territory town of Berry Springs. The Croc races have become a top-end Cup Day tradition, and this year didn't disappoint.
Out of the gates and ready to run. There may not be a thoroughbred in sight, but these young salties have been preparing for their big moment on the Territory's own track.
A really long tail gives them that extra bit of motivation, bit of flick, those strong back legs, and as long as they look nice, fit and healthy.
The event draws punters from near and far in the hopes of picking a winner in Australia's most unique race.
Never seen a crocodile race, so be quite interesting, better than horses. Well, seeing the crocodile races, because we haven't been here before, we just arrived in Darwin yesterday, so from New South Wales.
Australia is huge. Everything has to be a big deal, and I love it. I simply love it, this place. And I love crocodile.
This year, the Croc races are stepping things up a notch with a new addition, camels. These camels aren't taking part in the races, if all goes to plan, but they are rounding out what's been a fantastic day here in Darwin. A day where everyone's a winner.
We won! Suck on my Croc!
Isabella Tolhurst, ABC News, Darwin.
Now to Herlyn Kaur with the weather, and it's been a mild few days, Herlyn.
Yeah, it sure has been, Bree. The metro has remained fairly cool and we are expecting a little bit more rain after what was a wetter than average October for large parts of WA. It was quite the contrary on the east coast, with the country as a whole recording its second warmest October on record. Today, Perth reached a top of 22.2 degrees around 10 past 12 from a low of 14.7 degrees around 10 past 4 this morning. Right now in town, it's 17 degrees. There were some light showers overnight to 9 a.m, with Pemberton in the southwest reporting 11 millimetres. The coldest town, though, was Wandering, where the mercury fell to 6 degrees. In the north, while there was some rainfall in the Kimberley, it was still a scorcher throughout the region. Halls Creek and Fitzroy Crossing got into the 40s, but Marble Bar was the hottest place today with a scorching 44 degrees this afternoon. On the satellite, we saw some heat troughs that have been generating convection and thunderstorms through the middle parts of the country, while a weak front is set to bring some showers to the southwest of WA tomorrow morning. So we'll see some possibly for Perth as well. A high pressure ridge will develop in the wake of that front later tomorrow, with a surface trough deepening inland from the west coast on Friday, which will start to drive up temperatures across the weekend. Nationally, and it's a sunny 31 degrees in Brisbane tomorrow, 27 for Sydney, but a warmer 33 for the capital. Melbourne is expecting a shower or two, reaching 33 as well. Wet in Hobart, 28, 25 and partly cloudy for Adelaide, and Darwin will be mostly sunny, 35 degrees. Back home, and there's a possibility of those showers and thunderstorms over the Kimberley and North Interior again, remaining very hot over the inland parts of the region. It's a fine day for central parts of WA tomorrow. Tops of 30 in Leinster and Laverton, but a cooler 23 for Geraldton. The south coast will see those showers, and possibly for parts south of the line from Lancelin to Katanning right down to Salmon Gums, and north along the west coast, possibly up to Geraldton, clearing in the afternoon. We've got a partly cloudy day ahead in Perth. There's a slight chance of a drizzle in the morning, reaching a cool top of 21 degrees from a low of 13 degrees overnight. On the local waters, winds will be southwesterly, reaching up to 20 knots, with the seas up to 1.5 metres. The sun is set to rise at 5:15 and possibly set at 6:46. And looking ahead, it'll stay fairly overcast on Thursday with a top of 22 degrees and possible shower for Friday, 25 from a cooler low of 10. Then it's clearing up for the weekend, top of 26 for Saturday and Sunday, Bree.
Thank you, Herlyn. And that's ABC News. You can stay up to date with ABC News online, or you can catch up anytime on ABC iView. It's been a pleasure having you join us. Stay with us now for 7:30.